We've been asking for it, and we've finally got it. The MCU is finally giving us fans the Blade movie we wanted. However, despite knowing that we're getting an MCU adaptation of the iconic half-vampire vampire hunter, there's still a lot that we don't know, such as what era the show will be set in. But thanks to a recently released casting call memo, we might have the answers. Here's everything we know so far. Starting off with a much-awaited announcement. Blade's recent casting call has given us a hint at its situation within the MCU timeline. Expected to be released sometime in November of 2023, the film is part of Disney's upcoming titles in Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The role of Blade is now going to be played by the Oscar-winning Mahershala Ali, who has already once made his MCU debut as Cottonmouth in Netflix's Luke Cage adaptation. The role had previously been brought to life by Wesley Snipes back in its 1998 animated film adaptation of the same name, and once again later on, with Snipes taking the lead once more in the live-action adaptations, Blade 2 and Blade Trinity. Those of you who have already read the comics or have seen Snipes' version of the character are already familiar with the basics. Blade's half-mortal, half-vampire, and seeks to avenge the death of his mother, and at the same time, rid the world of vampires. However, any further specifics on the reboot's plot are still yet unknown. This leaves fans with a ton of questions surrounding the upcoming version of the character, including whether it would be an origin story, what tone the film would have, and where it would fit in MCU's ever-expanding timeline. Considering the lack of plot details, Blade's placement is yet to be revealed. However, that mystery might have just been solved. According to a recent casting call for Blade, we've been given the first unofficial official glimpse at what that timeline could possibly be. The casting call was asking for extras to film a scene that would be taking place from November 14th to November 22nd, and also included a long list of specifications required from the actors, many of them being pretty standard. However, the most interesting point was included in the hair requirements of the casting call. The caption underneath the section heading read, "This film takes place in a past time period." It then goes on to specify that male extras needed to get haircuts that matched the time period, and that female extras ideally needed to have the ability to either style their hair or be able to wear one of the available wigs. What's more, this is the first major Blade update we've had in a while. While this may seem pretty minor stuff to most, this casting call is the first real news about the upcoming film that gives us a hint as to what the plot of the film could be. While most recent Marvel films have been set in or are set close to the modern era, both the MCU and Marvel are no strangers when it comes to depicting some of the past time periods. Keeping this in mind, we still have no idea as to what specific time period the new Blade adaptation would be going in. If the hairstyles required by the casting call appear a lot more different than those seen in the modern day, then that would mean that the time period would very likely be more than 30 years old. The earliest time period that a Blade feature could potentially be set in would likely be around the good old 80s. It was the era of perms and slicked back hair, which could decorate the heads of every mortal and/or vampire who live within the Blade universe. On the other hand, the film could also go even further back to take on the Mad Men-like hairstyles that were dominant around the 1950s or 1960s. Based on some of the more recent MCU works, it's highly unlikely that Blade would be going back to before the 1900s. But with such little information currently available to us on the plot of the film, anything can be possible. On the other hand, the adaptation also needs to keep one thing from the originals. The MCU Blade movie needs to retain the horror aspects that have always played an important role in the titular character. Some classic horror tropes, along with the iconic Hong Kong-style fight scenes the previous live-action adaptations are known for, which may be the MCU's toughest challenge, are all crucial if they expect their upcoming film to look and act like a Blade film. There's no doubt that striking the balance between horror and action will play a big role in determining the success of the character's re-entrance into the spotlight with his 2023 reboot. Besides, Blade has always been a horror figure. While Snipes' older adaptations are mostly known for its action sequences, they also feature featured some prominent horror elements, including impressive amounts of fake blood and gore. MCU's Blade, now with Mahershala Ali in the lead role, should also include some horror aspects. In fact, they should go even further beyond. However, in doing so, the production quality may struggle, considering that it's a PG-13 movie. It may need to shift away from all of the blood and gore that have been characterized by the Wesley Snipes trilogy. Furthermore, fans shouldn't be worried about the MCU not being able to handle some horror. You don't need to concern yourself with the MCU's ability to make sure that the fundamentally horrific nature of Blade is kept intact. The franchise has seen considerable growth in the supernatural horror genre, and besides, Blade isn't even the first vampire hunter in the MCU. Marvel has already proven that it can create a successful adaptation of the genre, while also adding all of its horrific elements into the universe. A great example of this would be Multiverse of Madness, which featured some satisfyingly gory moments along with some of the more common occult-inspired imagery. The most impressive example in the MCU is Moon Knight, as the show has featured many well-executed horror tropes. As well as having the ancient Egyptian theme running throughout the series, it also included fights against mummies, wights, and even werewolf-like jackal creatures. The show also dealt heavily with the themes of psychological horror, with its usage of mirrors, flickering lights, and shadows in order to illustrate the psychological condition of Mark Spector. With all of this experience already under their belt, the MCU has all the tools necessary to do Blade justice. Some fan-favorite supernatural characters, such as Werewolf by Night, have already seen their MCU debuts, and there are also talks of a potential Ghost Rider feature in the franchise's future. Therefore, it's going to be important for the MCU to continue taking some inspiration from the horror genre. Meanwhile, in other Blade-related news, first up, the MCU Blade already has one major difference from Wesley Snipes' adaptation. The change of Blade's actor from Wesley Snipes to Mahershala Ali will likely mean that the character now has completely different strengths and weaknesses. On one hand, Wesley Snipes' Blade was always portrayed as a strong fighter, constantly punching vampires in the jaw in fight scenes that were inspired by Snipes' history as both a martial artist and an action movie star. Meanwhile, on the other hand, although Mahershala Ali doesn't have the same action star background, he's still an Oscar-winning actor, which could result in a less physical but more grounded take on the character. Ali's Blade could use the character's arsenal of supernatural and mystical abilities to depict a side of the character that hasn't been seen before in his live-action adaptations. We'll still be seeing his sword and guns in action, but hand-to-hand combat might not be as prominent, at least not as much as it was in Snipes' version of The Vampire Hunter. Next up, Bassam Tariq steps down as director for the MCU Blade movie. Bassam Tariq is reportedly no longer going to be directing the upcoming MCU Blade adaptation. The film was supposed to begin production this November, with a release date set for November 3rd, 2023. But because of the continued shifts in the production schedule, Tariq would no longer be able to act as its director. However, Marvel has announced that he'll still continue to remain an executive producer on the film, and that he's eager to see which direction the new director would be taking the adaptation in. And lastly, Marvel delays the start of Blade's production. 3 years after Marvel's announcement at the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con, the Mahershala Ali starring Blade film was almost ready to begin filming. However, all of that came to a sudden stop after the director, Bassam Tariq, stepped down from his position just a week before filming. On the other hand, there were also rumors of Mahershala Ali himself being annoyed with the current script, as it was reportedly very dull and boring, not fitting for a Blade adaptation. While nothing has been officially confirmed by Marvel just yet, new reports suggest that fans of this long-awaited project will have to wait a little longer. That's a wrap for this video. What era do you think Blade is going to be set in, and what do you expect to see in the MCU's adaptation? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.